Support for this podcast and the following message come from Corient. Corient provides wealth management services centered around you. They focus on exceeding your expectations and simplifying your life. Corient has been helping high achievers just like you enjoy their lives more fully, preserve their wealth, and provide for the people, causes, and communities they care about. As one of the largest integrated fee-only registered investment advisors in the U.S., Corient has deeply experienced teams in 23 strategic locations. Corient has extensive knowledge spanning the full spectrum of planning, investing, lending, and money management disciplines. Leverage Corient's exclusive network of experts to craft custom solutions designed to help you reach your financial goals, no matter how complex they may be. Real wealth requires real solutions. For more information, connect with a wealth advisor today at Corient.com. That's Corient.com. Corient.com.
You know how to book flights and hotels. All you're missing is a tool to plan the travel experiences you'll have once you arrive. That's why you need Viator. Book guided tours, activities, excursions, and more in one place to make your trip truly unforgettable. Viator has over 300,000 travel experiences to choose from. Everything from simple tours to extreme adventures and all the niche, interesting stuff in between. So you can plan something that everyone you're traveling with will enjoy. Real traveler reviews give the inside scoop from people who've already been on the experiences you're considering. So you can plan with confidence. Free cancellation helps you plan for the unexpected. And 24/7 customer support means you can travel worry-free. Download the Viator app now and use code Viator10 for 10% off your first booking in the app. Find travel experiences for you. Do more with Viator.
Welcome to the Comedy Album Book Club. This is Matthew Ardill, and today I'm happy to present our interview with California-based comedian and writer Beth Stelling. You may remember Beth from our April episode with the hilarious Grace Smith and Ryan Hughes, where we chatted about Beth's second album, Simply the Beth. Beth was Ohio-raised and started her comedy career in the Chicago comedy community before relocating to Los Angeles in 2012, shortly after releasing her first album, Sweet Beth. She has appeared on Conan, Jimmy Kimmel Live, The Meltdown with Jonah and Kumail, At Midnight, Last Call, the UCB show, The Stand-Ups, and We Can Fix You, not to mention her Comedy Central half-hour special. Beth has performed across North America and around the world with sets at the Melbourne Comedy Festival, Just for Laughs in Montreal, JFL 42 in Toronto, where I was lucky enough to see her perform, and frequently tours the US, performing at clubs and festivals across the country. As well as doing stand-up, Beth works writing for television, working as a writer and story editor on projects including I Love You America, Seth Rogen's Hilarity for Charity, Crashing, and also producing roles for her set on The Stand-Ups, as well as the film Good Boys and the TV series Ridiculousness. Beth Stelling's material is at once story-driven and joke-dense, a feat that's hard to accomplish. Her material never feels hard to follow and is very conversational. Having seen her perform, there's an immediate accessibility to her performance, an openness and assuredness on the stage. You trust her immediately, and when you follow her on the ride of a joke, it may go to some dark places, but on the other end, you're going to laugh. During our conversation, we talk about some of the albums that influenced her journey in comedy, as well as her work as a punch-up writer and working in a writing room, and how it's changed her approach to comedy. We also touch on her album, Simply the Beth, and some of the material she may have approached differently if she had it to do again, as well as the question, did her mother ever figure out who her best friend was? Thanks to Beth Stelling for taking the time to sit down with us and opening up about her influences, process, and work. Please enjoy the episode, and remember to rate, review, and subscribe.
Hello.
Hey, Beth, this is Matt from Comedy Album Book Club. How are you doing?
Hey, I didn't know you're from Canada. Otherwise, I would have never agreed to this.
Us Canadians are trouble.
Oh my gosh. How you doing?
Great, thanks. Great. Thanks for chatting with me today. And how are you doing?
I'm extremely tired. I did wake up for you. I was delayed. I did shows in Oregon. I'm just gonna turn my record player off. I did shows in Oregon, yes, like all weekend. I did what was it, Bend, Salem, and Eugene. I was trying to get home yesterday morning, and my flight was at 6. I woke up at 4, and then I got to the airport, and my flight was delayed 6 hours because the wheel was messed up. And so I just, obviously stayed at the airport. I guess I could have taken an Uber back, but to the hotel and slept for 4 more hours. But that's a weird risk. What if the wheel came sooner?
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things. Like a wheel, you're glad they figured that out before you got in the air.
And then you finally get home, and it's 2:30. I had to wait for my bag because I had merch with me. And then by the time I got home, I don't even know. I think it was, I don't want to exaggerate, but I think it was 4:30 or 5. Yeah.
Ouch.
So it's I was just doing that for 12 hours.
Yeah. So when I first reached out, you mentioned you didn't listen to a lot of comedy as a novice comedian to keep it from influencing your work. I actually literally did my very first stand-up set last night. I've been doing improv and sketch for a while, and it was my first time doing stand-up, and it was sort of like...
How did it go?
It went pretty good. It was, friends and family. It's a second city course, so, it's a merciful start to
very much.
To comedy. I've had improv sets where it's like, oh, geez. Yeah.
It's like a real program where they put you into the nice little sanctuary instead of into the wild to get eaten.
Exactly. It's like the sugar water they give to baby gazelles before they let them out into the wild to be hunted by lions. But do you think that's important for comics during those early stages, that just to find their voice and sort of stay away from other material?
Yeah, I wouldn't have known. No one taught me anything. I didn't take a class. I know some great comics who started with a class, so I'm not against that at all. I think it's hard to teach stand-up personally, but also I know why they exist, and I think they're helpful. I guess I really was more into acting and theater, and I always liked the funny stuff, of course. I did musicals and not really plays. My early stuff was just musicals in high school, and I loved getting laughs. And then I also did speech and debate, so I liked getting laughs that way. Yeah. But it was, sorry, I'm going to yawn. No problem. I might have a history of yawning on Canadian podcasts, and I would rather, I was on Graham's podcast. And stop broadcasting yourself, is that what it is, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. And anyway, I couldn't stop yawning. No disrespect. I love Canada. I'd rather be Canadian.
No worries. Keep up the tradition.
But yes. So, okay, anyway, the point is, my friend Will, who was on Speech and Debate with me, he burned me Jim Gaffigan's album. I was like, you should listen to stand-up. Have you ever, thought about stand-up? And the truth is, it's been so many years, I kind of don't know, but I know for a fact that I never listened to stand-up and idolized it and dreamed of doing it. I think I always thought it was sort of just this kind of unreachable thing that you had to almost have it in you, be a genius to be able to do it. It wasn't something you worked on and became. It was more that's a gift. That is something, I just didn't think that was really achievable, I guess is the word. And so I listened to it, and it didn't hook me or anything. Jim's amazing, so it's not like it was a bad album. I listened and I was like, this is pretty cool. I think it's the idea of remaining standoffish to something that you don't think is approachable. And when I finally did start stand up. Yeah, I was very scared of stealing and being stolen from, which is a funny little thing that a lot of young comics go through. Little do they know, most older comics did half their bits at year 3.
It's funny because like Robin Williams, for example, like was notorious for it, but it was completely it wasn't premeditated. It's just like something you can get to your head and sit there, and you think, oh, that's my idea. It was totally funny, kind of thing. So I understand that.
I idolized Robin, and who knows what was going on in his head. He could have. I mean, obviously we think stealing is like a mortal sin, and I also would never do it. I would be mortified if I did. I've never done any stealing on purpose, like that's kind of like a cardinal rule. But with him, I really don't know what I guess we can't know unless there's an interview or something where he talks about it. But like sometimes I think he did just take it. I think he sometimes did. And maybe because he knew he could do it better.
Well, possibly. There is always that thing of like, oh, it's a good idea, but I know you could do this or this and this. And
I watch comics still, and I want to. Because I've done Punch Up now for so long. I mean, not so long, but you know what I mean. A couple years that. I'm talking like a grizzled 60-year-old, and my voice sounds like it. But anyway, that's been my job more, writing and Punch Up. Sometimes now I've found going back to stand up that. I watch other people and I'm like, what if he said this? I mean, I don't go up and say that to them, but I'm like, oh, there's the opportunity there. But the truth is none of us have directors telling us that. And used to be someone who would never expect or accept help as a stand-up. It's like such a lone sport. And we didn't do a lot of like building and riffing. Like, I'm not saying it never happened in Chicago, but it wasn't like a community group thought where it was, what if you had this or what if you had that? It always felt very singular. And so now more days I'm almost open to like, I want to know how it made you feel or what it made you think. And that's helped me as I've been shaping my new hour. Like I'll just ask friends that I trust. And they have pointed out things that make total sense where I'm like, I mean, if you tell certain things over and over again, or you start chopping and editing or whatever, you need somebody else to be like, that doesn't make any sense at all.
Cool. Now you when we chatted, when I reached out, you mentioned 3 albums. So Retaliation by Dane Cook, Jim Gaffigan's Beyond the Pale, and Maria Bamford's Burning Bridges. So what made those 3 like stand out in your memory as like albums that are just like, wow, these are cool albums? I mean, besides Jim being the first kind of thing.
Yeah, Dane's for me was like, I think another person, I can't remember who, maybe my friend Tim. I always had these comedy guy friends or, performance friends that I became very close with, that I'd clown around with. But yeah, Tim, Allen was the first one who showed me Jim, and then Tim Simeone is the one that showed me Dane Cook. And I remember that was the first time that I really got rolling listening to comedy and wanting to share it with others. And I mean, I specifically, of course, remember like the shit on the coats bit. We'd be in a van, like I remember with friends, I think it must have been before my senior year of college, like down to Charleston, which was actually the first time I even tried stand-up. So it was like listening to Dane was intimidating because the laughs per minute and his energy and just making us just cry laughing. He was so silly and imaginative. And so that's what I remember about that album. Like it was like college kids, really connecting with it, dying laughing, sharing it with each other. And then Maria's album came later for me once I was in LA. I met her when she came to do the Lakeshore Theater in Chicago. She offered to do a little workshop with anybody who wanted to come on the Saturday before her show. She's always been generous like that and open. And I initially thought that her voice was a joke. Like when I first heard her album, or even her performance, and I was turned off by it. I don't like fake stuff. And then when I met her, I thought, oh my gosh, that's how she is. And it just kind of changed things for me, getting to know her as a person and also watching her perform, her voices and characters and full commitment and complete vulnerability. And so that's when I think I came in contact. I must have either bought or she gave us, or it was like my first festival maybe. Like it could have been Just for Laughs Montreal when they give you the swag bag. In 2011 I did New Faces, and I might have gotten the Burning Bridges in that. It was the album disc. And so I remember playing it out here in LA in my old driveway. I liked it because it, like, even the title has a little edge, which is Maria. Like everybody thinks, you know, she is nice and all that, and and her demeanor and her performances have a sweetness to them, but she's sharp as a tack, and you know, she can really lampoon things, behavior, and like as we've seen, dealing with mental illness and tough, darker subjects with precision. And I think even the fact that it was called The Burning Bridges sort of really delighted me.
Yeah. Well, that's
like,
the thing.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, the thing that I noticed, like all three of those albums, it's very truthful. Like it's like when you listen to those albums, I get an idea. Like I don't think Dane Cook is necessarily exactly like who he is on the stage, but that energy, I'm sure, is there. And
I think he was then. I think he's changed over time, but like I think that was maybe him at his, I don't know him, but potentially happiest.
Yeah, but it just feels very honest. All three of those albums are like, I feel like if I was to sit down with those people at that point in time, that's who I'd be sitting with. And I appreciate that in comedy. Like there's a British comic I saw just for JFL 42 in Toronto a few years ago, and it was just like I saw him do his hour, and then I saw the same special on Netflix, and even the quote unquote spontaneous bits were exactly the same, and it just changed the feel of the entire thing. It's like I left the show thinking, oh, this was funny, this is good. But then when I saw it, it's just like, oh no, that was totally fabricated. There was no genuineness in this. And that's what I mean. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's a style and it's fine. Yeah. It's just not what I want when listening to an album or seeing somebody play. Yeah. I
know. I always yearn for like truth and being genuine and honesty and trying to get to, you know, I like telling real things that happen, and they always have been like that. And so it was always shocking to me, like, wait, you can make it up? You know, like, are people seriously making stuff up? That's almost harder to me. But I don't know. I will say, too, like, as I'm headed into doing my first hour special, like, there are going to be moments that I improvised, and I hear what you're saying, so don't feel like bad with what I'm about to say. But there are moments that are improvised at some point that I have now included because you want to capture them. And but I also understand where you're coming from. Two things. One, some guy recently commented on my YouTube channel. It was more like a general thing about comedy because there's no way it could have been about me. It was just probably just trying to be a douche. But it was like, it's so creepy to watch people do the same act, rehearsed word for word, blah, 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 blah. And he commented on that on my personal YouTube, which has one video, which is me doing a home show in, like, I think it was 2014 or something. So I wrote him back. I was like, hey, there's no way you've recently seen this rehearsed word for word, but okay. I mean, like, you know, it's an old bit, but so it's like I get that too, but then more specifically for me, I understand now, you know, why you might want to put it in the special so you listen back for a reason to your sets if you improvise something. I think the times that I particularly relate to what you're saying I'm going to take a bite of this real quick. Hold on. I haven't started eating breakfast, but the times I particularly relate are like if someone, for example, maybe this is just me justifying, but like I have an improvised moment, or I know a little what to expect with audience members when I'm doing a certain portion of my hour because I've done it so many times now that I can navigate it easier. You know, so it's crowd work within an hour special, but I have a framework for it. But then the times that bother me are like, I'm not going to give a good example because I'm not as sharp as normal right now, but like, say I'm looking at this old frame I have in my kitchen that is like an old flashcard. So, it says like, say the sentence is, I really miss Obama. And that's what the flashcard is. It's like an old frame from when he won, when I lived in Chicago. But, and then I go, I really miss Obama. And that's what I'm saying in my act, or that's what, the sentence is. But I go, I really miss Osama. Osama, oh my God. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so say I do that, but then I do that repeatedly in the special, like I mistake a word, which then turns into a bit. That irks the shit out of me. It's so gross. I hate it because I know it's rehearsed, but then you put it in your special. So that's actually where something like that will get me too, where I'm like, ew, the trip over the fake trip over a word, and then the things that ensue afterwards. I'm just like, you would have cut it from the special.
Yeah. It's one of those things. It's like it's nothing wrong with it. It's just one of those, like, it's a flavor kind of a thing. Like, I respect like, kind of the difference between alt comics and club comics over the years. Like, or even just like when you're at the Comedy Store in the main room or something, it's like you want to be like hammer it. And like try to get a large group of people's attention and, give your jokes. I'm not saying I always do that, but I'm usually in the OR. But and then when Meltdown, when it existed out here in LA in the comic book shop, it's like they just wanted to hear like what was going on with you now and then. Like if you came out and did a precise act of jokes, they it's not that you wouldn't do well necessarily, but they just wanted to be with you. And so that's the difference almost between alt and clubs. Yeah, there's a naturalness to alt comedy, I find. Like it's like it's an honesty, and I mean it's not that other comedy before that wasn't honest. It's just a different voice, and that's why it so resonates with me. Like Maria and Patton and all that sort of that movement, like with Sarah Silverman and all that, all of those voices where it was just like, this is the unvarnished me, and it was just. So that's what really I loved in comedy. One of the what really made me think, this is something that I'm not just I enjoy, but this is something I want to dedicate my life to in some capacity. Yeah, not just like necessarily a punchline or more like talking about their life or. Yeah. Now you have two albums. Yeah, exactly. It's just there's a. And I mean, it predates them. I mean, and that's the thing with this podcast is we really dig into stuff. Like we recently did Lenny Bruce. So, I mean, it goes back years, but it's like finally resonated with me with that generation of comics where it's like, these are, like Patton Oswalt and Sarah Silverman and that entire group where it's like, I mean, they're descendants of that same type of voice, but it's finally like, it's caught up to a point where it's like, I understand this. Like this speaks to me, it's that, did you watch or did you do Lenny because of Maisel? Oh, we did. Well, I mean, just because. I mean, I loved the portrayal of Lenny and Maisel. It really there's moments where it's like he just the actor portraying Lenny just captures even the most minuscule mannerisms so brilliantly, and it doesn't feel forced. It just feels natural. It's not like, this is some actor who's like being method or whatever. This is like, no, it just feels like this is an approximation of this person. And it didn't dwell on the nasty parts of his life. It just sort of highlighted how he was like a mentor to a lot of people. And I thought it was perfect. And I love Maisel. I love that show.
I love it.
I mean,
there's comics that that I love and respect that I hate it, and I'm like, sometimes when you like something, and then somebody tells you, and you're like, oh. I remember my friend April, who was a Black woman, was like, she was doing a thesis, and she was studying Black history, and I remember this was when we were living in Chicago, and I was like, I went and saw The Help with my mom. Oh, it was such a sweet film. And she then was like very gently, and it's not her job to do this, but was like, okay, so here's what's wrong with that film. And I was like, oh my God. Of course I wouldn't think of it that way because I'm a freaking white person. But it was basically the idea that white women saved these women who were stuck in slavery and in homes. And I was like, oh my God, I'm an idiot. When somebody's just like, well, here's a different perspective. So I am thankful she did that. But that just made me think of when you like something and then somebody else comes along and is like, here's why it's fucked. And you're like, oh, shit. But yeah, Maisel, of course, is different than that. But it just made me think of April because Maisel's more, I think some people have an issue because she isn't a Jewish person and she's portraying a fairly caricature version of a Jewish person. I think there's that. And I grew up Christian Methodist in Ohio. So I'm always having to sort of learn new things even as I go. But I think, too, some people prefer a comic playing a comedian, and I've been like that in my life. I've been like, if it's a stand-up comic, it has to be played by a stand-up comic. But to me, I think Rachel does a really amazing job playing a comedian.
Oh, yeah.
To the point where I look at it, I'm like, well, I couldn't do that at all.
Like, I mean, and Amy Sherman Palladino's writing is always so taut. It's just like so quick and so fast, and sometimes like in Gilmore Girls, it was like a little like this just doesn't feel right to me.
Like put on.
But yeah, it felt put on. But in Maisel, it feels right because it's a fantasy of 1960s comedy. It's like a fantasy of that East Village, the jazz rooms and stuff. And this is, in my imagination, this is kind of what it was to me, like when Joan Rivers was coming up and you had all these like folk bands mixing with comedians. So this is what it was in my head. So it's like, oh, this works. This just resonates for me there. But and the show has these like crazy little details, like the dress at the end of season 1 being like identical to the one Joan Rivers wore on her first appearance on the Tonight Show and stuff like that.
Oh,
it's
cool.
It's just like, and it's like one of those things I like read online later. I'm like, oh wow, that is crazy. But yeah, and it's just it's done from a place of love, which goes a long way for me too.
Yeah, I don't know. Everybody was like, you don't get on stage by bringing a brisket. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's a TV show.
Yeah, and
like,
I mean,
to me, the most realistic portrayal of a come up in comedy is Brett Bailey's. And it's a movie about one of my tracking fluid sleep problems, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Where like he's coming out. I think that is like the most accurate portrayal, but it's start in a smaller town, try to work your way up on the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And his other movie, it's funny, he has 2 movies where it's like it feels really grounded in the reality of different types of comedy. He has one about where it's an improv troupe.
Oh, right.
And Don't Think Twice. And it's like, again, it's like I've known every single person that I'm sure somebody will say, oh yeah, you're that guy.
Yeah.
From doing improv. If you're that one, so as long as I'm the Chris Gethard guy, then I'm fine. So that makes me happy. Yeah. So you had 2 albums of your own, Sweet Beth and Simply the Beth. How did you prepare for that? And is it a lot like preparing for your hour? How's it similar and how's it different?
I would say there are some similarities in that there was a set list. But, you know, we can't take things back. So what are you going to do? You can't live in regret.
Yeah.
But, I mean, in most comics, I don't, like, push them or recommend them to do an album. I mean, I get why, and it is cool to have out there. Like, and sometimes it can be like a really beautiful, best version of that stuff if you want to move on from it. But for me, that wasn't really it. It was just sort of, I had been doing some of these bits for a while, and it felt like the next step. And then I had Rooftop, you know, saying they were fans. And, you know, it's not that they forced me to do it or something, but they pushed me to do it and encouraged me. And I recorded it in Chicago, and long story short, the audio wasn't great, and I felt like people were laughing too hard, and it wasn't that funny. And my backpack got stolen the night before the taping with all my set lists. And while I was someone who started in stand-up and said I wouldn't have set lists, but I definitely always have a set list with me. So I felt like, of course, I knew the jokes. It's just a matter of like, oh gosh, I don't have my blankie. And so I don't know. That version of it got scrapped. And I just decided to use a Zoom in Cleveland off of this show I did at the attic of a bar. I didn't really tell anybody I was recording my album. So that's sweet, Beth. And you can tell, you know, it's like people are laughing, but they're not like overly laughing, and it doesn't sound like a overproduced stand-up album, because it's not.
Yeah.
It's me doing a show in a bar in Cleveland. I prepared, but there was like a stress to it. I remember writing the set list with my boyfriend Nick in his black Suburban out front of where I did it. It was called Red something. I can't remember it right now. Bar name. And I don't even know if it still exists. But yeah, I was still writing the set list and working things out, and there's jokes in there that I may have told once, and there's old stories that I told many times that I could tell better now. I mean, you know, it was 7 years ago, and it seems like a lifetime. I don't know if I answered your question. And then Simply the Best, similarly, was like, I wanted to put out something. Like, I don't have a great history of putting out an album that's the final product. In fact, it's almost like an in-between, and I'm not saying we should do that at all, but it's like oddly an in-between, where some of those jokes on Simply the Best that I put down, I later did the better version of them in my Netflix half hour of the stand-ups, and then I wish the audio of the stand-ups would go out. That would be nice if people could listen to that. I'd much rather people listen to that than nothing else I've ever done. Yeah, but the Simply the Best thing has jokes too that I just still told in the moment or had experienced earlier that year, and now they're gone. I don't tell them anymore. And I remember again at Beat Kitchen in Chicago, just stressing upstairs doing a set list, and it's not like, I don't know, I didn't have fun doing either of them. I mean, maybe that's a bit of a harsh take, but it's more stressful and unnecessary. And I can't believe they exist, and I can't take them back. So yeah, just got.
I've talked to a few comedians where they're like, it's not that they regret it, because but it's just they're like, I just wish I hadn't done it at that time.
Yeah,
and
I think all the young comics should be listening to these comics that are saying, "Don't do an album, you're not good."
Well, that's the thing. It's like they're like, "Oh yeah, I'll show you," and then you get these great albums. Now, I have a bit of a shared commonality. My grandparents actually retired to Ohio, Chagrin Falls, which is so I spent many a summer there. It's weird because there's like this mall that we used to go to is now completely abandoned, and trees are growing out of the ceiling or the roofs and stuff, and it's like. I always found Ohio especially being Canadian, like it was sort of like Canada, but
yeah,
just tilted slightly differently, where it's just everything felt off. And it was so weird visiting them, because it's like, yeah, this is like home, but not. And how did Ohio and like, because you have the bit, you can put your stuff in your bag and leave.
Oh yeah.
How did that affect your voice, your comic voice, and how you tell your stories?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just, when you're born somewhere, it's in your cells, the way you talk and your perspectives and what you're exposed to. And so in a lot of ways, you can't help that, because that's where you were. That's where they, mixed the dough and, rolled you out or made you into a little ball. But then, I haven't really tried to shed it. I really love Ohio. I mean, I love my hometown. My family lives there. I love visiting. I have nothing against Ohio. That joke's just sort of more funny and something that I joked about with my comedy friends and cohorts, the Putterboss sisters. But yeah, that was just more like a silly joke. But of course, Ohio is also a big state, so it's hard to say you're proud, because there's some people there who I'm not proud of, and even in my hometown, especially politically lately. But at the end of our block when we were home, I remember when Trump won, our next door neighbor had the Hillary sign for months in her front yard, and I remember thinking Ohio in denial. And at the end of our street, somebody, when I was home over Thanksgiving, put Trump in red underneath the stop sign, so it just says "Stop Trump." So our little corner is fun. But we do live I grew up in Oakwood, and everybody always hears Oakwood and is like, "Oh, you're rich." But there's two sides to Oakwood, and we definitely literally, there's an east and a west side, and on the east side there's mobile homes. I grew up a mom who was a teacher who worked in Kettering, and we just had one bathroom and 3 bedrooms for the 4 of us. Sometimes 7 of us. My mom did remarry once, and we had some guests for about 9 years. But it was I'm thankful for my upbringing, but it certainly wasn't extravagant or something. I had jobs and didn't have a car, but I think that I'm very thankful for that, for all of that, for the way that I was raised and that I had jobs and the darker parts of my childhood too. I'm always thankful for. I mean, because you can't change it, so you embrace it. But on top of that, I think unfortunately, I don't know if it's unfortunately, but hardship, in my opinion, breeds cool people. I just think that you have a better perspective. I don't know. I had to work for everything, and I'm thankful my mom never gave me everything. I had to work for everything I've earned.
Yeah. I grew up in a town similar to that, and it's the same thing. I joke about, I never want to go back, but I always enjoy going back. It's a place because it's home. It helps you become who you are. So yeah. Yeah,
I love being home. I think there's times I dream of getting the house next to my mom's house. I see myself more in my mom as I age, which was parallel.
Now you kind of touched on the dark parts. The thing with your material that I really love, and I kind of touched on it when we talked about your album Simply the Beth, was how at times you just sneak darkness into moments. It's oh, this is lovely, and then there's the twist, and it's really it feels, because that's what life is like. It's things seem awesome, and then you realize, oh no, there's this really dark thing underneath the surface there. How do you balance that tension? Is it something you actively work at, or is it just something that comes naturally?
It definitely is something that comes naturally. I don't ever end with a punchline and then try to get there. Or it's like I kind of mentioned before, I don't know how to teach stand up. Sometimes I just think of a joke and then I write it down, or I like to sit and say what's going on in my life and then kind of try to write jokes from there. The funny thing about that is, you know, you do that and then what's going on in my life becomes the next 2 years if you keep those jokes, you know, which goes back to the idea of what that guy said, which is like, keep repeating this, Gary. It's like, well, for some reason, that's just what the art is right now. I mean, it always has been, and it could keep changing. Podcasting, oddly, is, I think, changing some of that, because if I wanted, I could get on a podcast of my own and I can talk to myself for an hour and people would probably listen, and I don't think that's healthy, but that would be me making people laugh about an everyday thing, and they're like, that's what they're relating to more, like what's going on now and this or that, as opposed to here's something I've crafted over the last 2 years, you know. But even that's changing. You know, specials have changed. Like, they're called a special for a reason, in my opinion, because it's supposed to be something that is, in fact, special, that you crafted and worked on however long it took you to do it. And now specials seem more like podcasts for a lot of people. They're just kind of talking but
there's just so much. Sorry, go ahead.
What were you going to say? You go.
I was just going to say there's so much volume of specials too. It just seems like there's a new one every day.
Yeah, it's kind of wrong. But I remember watching Dana Gould when I first moved to LA, and I was at What's Up Tiger Lily, which is a show that Maria Bamford and Melinda Hill ran. It was booked by a woman named Jazz Ponce. And it was really hard to get on. And the lineups were long, and it was cool to be on the show. But I just remember watching Dana Gould. Like, I can't remember the exact joke, but it's just like a long story, long and dark, almost like he was telling them sort of like almost like a scary story, like around a campfire. And then it was just like a blow at the end that made me laugh so hard. I mean, obviously I'm being vague because I can't remember, and this was 8 years ago. But it was like watching him do that was I definitely, obviously it tickled me and I related to it. But I don't know really why I am like that. I just like, it's not that I get off on making people uncomfortable or anything. Who said that to me? That was really funny. I'm trying to remember now. Some people must have came and seen me. I was in Eugene on Sunday, and a group of people who were really awesome, you know, sweet, encouraging, like, we've been following you, and we you know, loved your stuff, and we saw you in Portland once at the Star, and then their friend chimed in who wasn't there, and he goes, you made him really uncomfortable. And I was like, it made me laugh because you kind of laugh it off, but it's very possible I did. You know, there is like a squirminess, I suppose, sometimes in delivering something that dark, but eventually it came out. I guess they were referring, I kicked a couple out within the first 7 minutes because they were hammered in the front row. And so I think that's more what they were talking about, because then she chimed in and was like, thank you for doing that. Those people ruin shows all the time. But these people were freaking hammered town. It was like, wow. I had to get them out. And it was like 7 and
it's weird how people think, I can just go and be a drunken fool and like ruin everybody else's experience. You don't see that at like the theater. You don't see that at like movies.
Well, now you do with people on their phones, but now people are like on their phones at Broadway shows, and I almost did it. I almost airdropped like this tweet, because I was watching Ben Platt, and he's tweeted in the past about people on their phones during his show while he's like he gives brilliant performances, and people look down at people on their phone. I mean, that makes me so mad. So I almost airdropped the tweet of his that I screenshot to several people who were on their phones around me. But then I would have been over the phone.
So this catch-22 would be a sick burn, but then you'd be cell phone kind of thing.
And I needed to somehow figure out how to change my name on my phone so it doesn't say from my full name.
Now, you talked about your mom a few moments ago. Now, when you do your material about your mom, there's a lovingness there it's so clear how much you care about her. But it's so funny you did the bit about when you were in that Playboy article online.
Oh yeah.
Is there ever a point where you go like, this is funny, but it's Mom. I'm gonna let it go kind of thing, or is it just like you just like, oh, she's so funny, I'm gonna just enjoy it?
Yeah, I think it's like, I think she is always up for it. There's only one time where she got upset with me, and I feel really bad about it. But also, yeah, and that joke is only in one thing, and it was actually like, that's a deeper story, but it was when I was like, I was in a darker place and I was seeing someone who's not a nice person. So it's interesting that that's the one joke that I regret, like telling, because it wasn't, I don't know, but like I guess dovetailing off of that in the same couplet of jokes, my Netflix hour or half hour is my mom still lives at home, loser. So I had that little bit in there, and it hurt my feelings. Coupled with the other thing I just mentioned that I'm not going to say, not because I don't want to, but it was just a dumb old reference about her living alone. On top of that, my mom told us. So that I could understand why it hurt her feelings, and I felt awful. Well, she really did it to her. So that didn't feel good at all, so I don't want to do that. But then my mom and that was probably 4 years ago, but my mom and I do a podcast together, and we follow other people's moms. And
oh, wow.
It's called We Called Your Mom. And comics think they're going to be a part of it, but they're not. Like, it's just me and my mom calling their mom. And so we called Maria Bamford's mom, Marilyn. And Marilyn and my mom, Diane, teamed up on me. And we're like, because my mom brought it up. She was like, now, Marilyn, have you ever had a joke told about you that, hurt your feelings? And I'm sure she has with Maria. Like Maria and I think probably share, I don't want to flatter myself. I just mean we share a little bit of that. And if anything, she's influenced it. But I like talking about her mom or imitating her mom. And to me, that's a very Maria thing. And I mean, of course, it's a human thing. Everybody could imitate their mom, but you get what I'm saying. I'm just giving her credit for credit's due. And anyway, they teamed up on me about the loser joke. And Marilyn was like, I think you should take that out. And I was like, it's in a special. It's too late. But it's so funny because they're very smart women, both of them. And both seem to understand that, of course, you live at home. It's your home. That's the joke. If I said it about my sister, it'd be cruel. But it is your house, so you're still allowed to live there. And they just weren't really having it. It was, I took it. When it's your mom, you get a mom. You got to take it. They're mom. You're always right. Yeah. You've done a lot of writing for television as well as stand-up and do punch-up work, and were one of the producers of The Good Boys. Is there like something that you do you prefer writing for stand-up, or do you prefer like doing punch-up work or writing for screen? Like, where do you feel more comfortable right now? I love doing punch-up because it's just like the bones are there, and I can just come in and pitch out my imagination, my ideas, and my perspective, and add jokes in, and it's very rewarding to see them then go in. It's like very, flattering, of course, but then just cool that you leave your mark on something. And I get a lot of joy out of that outside of my own stand-up. I don't know if I have a preference. I think, stand-up will always be my first love because that's what's got me everything. But I do like punch-up. I still sometimes find, crafting the whole thing myself to be daunting. I don't know if there's a writer who doesn't, but now that I've entered more collaborative work, I seek out more feedback than I ever did with my stand-up.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's interesting, too. But yeah, I don't know. Did I answer that?
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so a couple more questions, and I'll let you go and have breakfast and get on with your day. So one question I ask pretty much everybody is do you have a particular weird experience? It doesn't necessarily have to be, whatever weird experience, but a weirdest performance experience. I have one guest who performed at a nudist colony and another at a bachelorette party. So is there any performance where it's just so strange or just out there that it really stands out in your memory?
Yeah, I remember around LA, I just say yes to a lot of shows, and LA is known for not really paying comics, which I think breeds the sort of, lax approach to comics on stage, sort of, I can't think of the word, but it doesn't matter. But whereas in New York, you have your paid spots and you get up, they take themselves very seriously. And, it's like that. Everybody likes to think of the dynamic like that, I suppose. But because there's a lot of strange different shows around LA, like house shows, backyard shows, and those happen in Brooklyn too. But you just find yourself saying yes to things, because you're not expecting to really get paid. So you're like, oh, I'll get up. Well, some guy emailed me and I agreed to do it, and he said it was a house show. And then when I got there, it was it was really just him and 4 friends in their living room. And I was like, the only reason I felt okay is because Matt Broussard was there and Andy Peters, who were the other comics. And I was like, okay, so I'm not alone. And, and I just performed in front of a wall in their living room. It felt like the comics outweighed the audience. And, there's a piano, and it ended up being really fun. But yeah, what an odd thing to do, to pretend you're gonna. I mean, I think they might have had intentions of having a house show, but it was just 100% them guy friends hanging in their living room, asking comics to come to their house and being. It kind of felt like, oh my God, I can't believe we got Beth Stelling to come to our house. It's like, me either. I can't believe you did either. So that made me reevaluate some things later in my choices.
It's funny, comedy is one of the few jobs or professions where you're like, I'll just get in a car and go someplace that I don't know where I'm going, and to do it. And it's for everybody, it's pretty bananas, but sometimes some good material comes from that. Okay, so last question before I let you go. I have to ask, did your mother ever figure out who her best friend was? You don't have to tell me who it was. Just to this day. Yeah.
It's I forget what ended up happening. She showed me the envelope. She found the envelope where she had been writing all her guesses down. And she's no longer with Sprint, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Yeah. So she's now on my oldest sister's family plan. But I don't think that she ever got the answer, because Gail was her cousin, and Margot was her college friend. But she couldn't figure it out. At one point, I think, and I don't put this in the bit because I don't think it was as funny, but maybe I did at some point, but I think she had said something like the Beatles. Bad response. They're best friends with the Beatles. I mean, she's a musician and a pianist and a music teacher. She was, but anyway, so. But no, I think the answer is no, because.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, she couldn't. But that whole thing is hilarious. She's hilarious.
Yeah, it just I went. That was one of those bits where I'm like, that is my relationship with my mom. I completely identified with that moment, and I'm like, I could see that. I guess my mom, she just moved into a house and was helping her set up her internet. So I'm like, okay, get out your. She had 3 different books of passwords, and I'm like, okay, what book is the right one? and like, okay, we got to consolidate this, and then we're going through like none of these passwords are actually right. So it's like, it's like I felt that in my heart when I first heard that bit, and it's just like it was beautiful. It was beautiful.
I'm glad.
Well, Beth, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. And is there anything we're going to be putting this up at the start of January? Is there anything that you'd like to let people know about?
I'll be touring in all of January and February, in leading up to where I'll be taping my hour special in March in Chicago. So those details are forthcoming. But yeah, I'm in Denver, Charleston, Houston, Durham, Indianapolis, Vancouver, February 20th. I'm trying to think if I have other Canadian dates lined up for you guys. I'll be trying to get back to Toronto, and I had a really fun time in Calgary at Sled Island. Sled Island. Sounds like Sled Island. But anyway, so yes, basically I'm touring sweetbeth.com/tour leading up to the filming of my special, and that's really it. Focused on that.
Terrific.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again. When you're next in Toronto, I will be there for sure, because I missed you last time, and I'm like, we had tickets to the following week's show, and I'm like, my wife got them for me, and I was like, you get, I need to pay more attention to the local listings.
You do. No, but I'll be back, and I'll try to let you know.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much, and have a good nap later on today.
All right. Thanks. I'll talk to you later. Okay, bye.
Bye.
You know how to book flights and hotels. All you're missing is a tool to plan the travel experiences you'll have once you arrive. That's why you need Viator. Book guided tours, excursions, and more in one place. There are over 300,000 travel experiences to choose from, so you can find something for everyone. And Viator offers free cancellation and 24/7 customer support for worry-free travel. Download the Viator app now and use code Viator10 for 10% off your first booking in the app. Find travel experiences for you. Do more with Viator.
Looks like you need a vacation. Enter the 5-Hour Energy Where Will the Tide Take You sweepstakes. You could win a $10,000 dream beach vacation. Imagine jet setting off to a tropical paradise, having fun in the sun, or diving at a gorgeous reef. It's up to you. No purchase necessary. Go to 5HETide.com for official rules and to enter. That's 5HETide.com. Enter today. Ends June 30th, 2024.